Good morning, students. I'm Stephen Paul, Assistant Professor of the Department of English, and today the lecture is going to be about Restoration Age. I'll first begin with the political context of Restoration Age, what was happening during the kingdom, the wars which influenced all the literature, and what all influences were brought by the surrounding nations around England onto the literature, and then we'll discuss what was the primary literature produced in that age. Okay. So the political and literary context of Restoration Age, what was happening is, who was restored? Charles II was restored in the year 1660. The reason he was restored is, as I told you, in the Oliver Cromwell government, that is the Commonwealth period, there were many ups and downs. The civil war was happening, the nation was under a lot of chaos, both politically and socially, and the government could not sustain the peace that they promised about. Though the democracy began, it could not sustain in a way that they desired. So what happened was, the young men of the Puritan, the young men of the parliamentarian side, the young men of the democratic side, what they thought was, they were very zealous, in the beginning, from the influence from Luther, from the influence from Milton and all those people. They were very zealous for establishing democracy, and they were very zealous for having a Commonwealth kind of government. But what happened is, looking at the disappointment, they were disillusioned in a way. So what they thought is, let's see how the royalist regime controls. Let's see how Charles II has to offer, because Charles II had made many promises, as I told you. He made promises to maintain equality. He made promises to always consult with the parliament when he has to make decisions. He has made promises to treat the taxes well and also the bond servants well. So with all these promises, they forgot their roots and they forgot their ideals. And the older generation, though they were still supporting the Cromwell government, the new generation, what they did, they supported Charles II, and that is how Charles II was restored in 1660. But in his regime, all these things were still happening, which made restoration so chaotic, and so confused, that the literature also seems very convoluted kind of thing, with many themes, very disturbing themes. So for you to understand why the themes of the literature in Restoration Age was so disturbing, you need to understand what all was happening. And he gave offices to the blackguards. Blackguards doesn't mean African American, blacks. It means those who are not so well reputed. He gave them high, like blacklisted kind of people, he gave them high offices, Charles II. And he helped himself from the finances of the royal treasury. He played off Catholics and Protestants, like having internal politics, so that they have conflict among themselves, and so that he can control them, like divide and rule policy kind of thing. How the British did with us, starting with the Bengal. And he made many promises, as I told you, and he broke all his promises. And he also made treaties with Dutch, I'll tell you. And then he also used his money to buy off other countries to win his favor, so that even if the people protest against him, he will have other countries to come and support him, so that his rule continues. So he has done all these things, and that is how the Restoration Age was. The Restoration Age was, though the young men supported it, it was more chaotic, more disturbing. The Commonwealth period, though it was chaotic, it was pointing towards something. It was pointing towards democracy. It was giving hope for people. But on the other hand, Restoration, it was going backwards. It was taking back the hope that the people had in sense of democracy and their personal opinion. And these are all were also happening. I told you the church and the state was separated. Under whose rule was it separated? Henry VIII, isn't it? Because he had to annul his marriage to marry someone else. So, and they were using this relaxation, that the church and state was separated, and by using that, they were creating rules which go against the church to subjugate those people who are part of the church, the Puritans especially, and that they can win over them. And all the royal parliament, he told that he'll consult the parliament, but all the parliament were only given by noble people. These kind of things keep happening around us, right? In many of the political scenarios, even though we feel like we have democracy and we vote, most of the cabinet is filled by the elite class. And the lower class, the marginalist class, there is lot less representation. And that kind of thing was also happening during Charles II regime, that all the hereditary titles and estates were given to noblemen, I mean the elite people, but they were ignoble. Ignoble is They were not noble by their behavior, they were just noble by their birth. And there was also the justice. Brutal Jeffreys is a very important incident which was happening. It's like they paid off all the judges, and those who ever rebelled against the Charles II government, they killed them. And in the court, though they were prosecuted, they were acquitted of their crime, and they were declared that they are innocent. Okay, because the judges were all paid off and they were in favor. 5 people were killed for those who protested. In democracy, do we have the right to protest or not? When something is going wrong, we do have the right to protest, but these people who were protested, they were secretly killed and murdered, and the court was framed against them. These kind of things also keep happening, right? We have hopes in our Supreme Court, we have hopes in our local courts, but sometimes the justice isn't served at all, even though all the evidence is in our favor. That is how the elite and the power politics work, and those kind of things were also happening in Charles II regime. And in all of this, Cromwell's government vanished, that's why. Okay, slowly in 1658 his government was completely down. His son, who though he took over, he could not continue. That is why in 1660 Charles II was restored, and the people faced a lot of struggles in this kind of thing. And I also wanted to tell you about the Anglo-Dutch wars. Dutch means which country? Netherlands. So Anglo-Dutch wars are the wars between England and Netherlands. You might be wondering why do we have to learn about Netherlands in this context, because after Restoration Age, I told you there comes the Glorious Revolution, and William III of Orange, he comes to rule over, and he is a Dutch. Okay, so this wars connect to how he comes to rule over after the Restoration period. Okay, there were 3 prominent wars which were fought between the English and the Dutch, that is the Netherlands. The first war was in 1652 to 1654, and it was led by Cromwell first, not Charles II. Cromwell, though he was democratic, he was very ambitious. Okay, he wanted to conquer other countries, especially through naval. Okay, naval means ship, sea wars. So he wanted to conquer a lot through the naval battles, and that is why he invested most of the money into navy, which the people were not happy. Okay, it's like America investing more and more money into establishing military, okay, in not only America but also in the other country with which the Democrats are not happy about. So that kind of thing. And trade and commerce was also increasing, and the important battle was Scheveningen battle, and after the battle they had a treaty. Okay, in the treaty what happened is that William of Orange, he wanted to become stadtholder of French. Okay, you don't remember all of these details, you just try to remember that William wanted to be the ruler of French, okay, but he was stopped from because of the war, the treaty that they made. In this treaty, it is believed that the England had an upper hand, okay, in whatever the battle, in whatever the casualties which occurred. And in the second war, there is a person called Samuel Pepys. I'll tell you, because of his diaries most of the history is recorded, and that we know what was happening. And in this diaries it is written that this age was made for war, because Cromwell was very ambitious, Charles II was all the more ambitious, okay, and he led many wars during his time. That is why I told you it is very chaotic, and that the social order was under lot of chaos during his time. Okay, and New Netherlands, New Amsterdam, these all countries were ceded. Ceded has been they were under the Dutch and they gave it to England. Okay, that is how New Netherlands and New Amsterdam. The New Amsterdam, that is New York now. New York is in America. The Netherlands had power over the place in America, and they gave it away as an exchange for the war because they lost it. And there was a plague in 65 to 66, which is very important. And there is also a Great Fire of London which happened in 1666. There are a lot of poetry written against that during the war, and the war ended with Breda Peace Treaty. And the third war was what happened. In this third war, the England had a complete upper hand. Okay, previously, because England and French had united, but what happened is there is a person called De Ruyter from the Dutch. He is a very good tactician, and because of it, even though they seem to have an upper hand, they lost the battle. They lost a lot of casualties. Okay, and that is why what this person Charles II, he had to make a peace with the Dutch, and that peace, okay, led to William of the Third having an upper hand to come to England and to rule, because Charles II was losing and the people were losing trust on him that he can be a good ruler and take on the country, and William was gaining power because of the peace treaty. And that's how William of Orange, see what happened. In 1688, the Dutch feared that England might align with France, so they made a treaty. William of Orange, he took an invitation from 7 influential Englishmen. There were Englishmen who were discontented with the kind of the rule Charles II was doing, and they secretly made an alliance with the Dutch, especially William of Orange, inviting him to come and take over England, to rule it. Okay, and so during this time Charles II was also dethroned. James II came in place of him, I told you, Charles II, and then comes James II by the time of Third War, and he had only ruled for 4 years, James II, but William of Orange, he came and he dethroned James II. I mean he himself was scared, okay, that the people might rebel against him and the people might assassinate him politically, so he fled. Okay, and in his place, William of Orange, he married Mary. Mary again comes from Henry VIII Stuart lineage, as I told you. So now this point of history is called Glorious Revolution or the Bloodless Revolution. It did not include any revolution. The people secretly made an alliance and brought William. So it is more of a democratic kind of protest. So it is called Bloodless Revolution, which happened in 1688 to 89. And this period is also called as Second Interregnum. Like how the first Civil War period is called First Interregnum, this period is called Second Interregnum. So the period between 1660 Restoration and 1689 is called Restoration Age. Okay, this is all the political context of what was happening during the Restoration Age. Clear? Yes. I also wanted to ask a revision question as to why the Whigs were against James II. I'll do that in the next class. Yeah. Now I'll tell you how literature of the age was, because I told you how all the political scenario was going on during this time. There was a lot of chaos, there were wars, the social order was neglected, people's social security was neglected during those times. And I also told you that the theatres were banned during the Commonwealth period. So when they were opened, they were like the immorality, the lewdness, okay, the desire for immoral things, it was all suppressed. So when the theatres were opened suddenly, it's like they burst out. Okay, it's like they burst out and they wanted to express so much. So the literature was very immoral in the eyes of few people because of its description, graphic description of few sexual relationships and also the extramarital affairs that were going on in the society. Okay, so that is why it is often compared to a disease, an excess of disease which was spread around the kind of literature which was produced during the Restoration Age. Okay, because an entire generation following Restoration, it was as if it was sick of fever. Okay, socially, politically, morally, London suggests an Italian city. Why Italian city? You know, the city was known for its sexual exploits. Okay, the romantic exploits. England being under Puritan regime, something to do with under church, it's like it was suppressed or put under some control, and it's like it burst open and it seemed to resemble Italian city. Okay, and its drama especially, okay, it's like delirium of illness, okay, and not an expression of healthy mind. It's like a literature which came out of some delirium. Delirium, you know, delirium, it's like you are under some influence of illness and not something like which came out of a healthy mind. Okay, that is the description given by critics when they look back at Restoration drama. Okay, and after the complete of bloodless revolution, it's like England was restored to health and sanity. Okay, it became a little sane, it became a little sensible, and it felt like all the struggle which Puritans were taking on, that the government should be more democratic, all it was going in vain, looking at how Charles II and James II were ruling. But after the Glorious Revolution, where William III came, England was restored again. Okay, the actual restoration happened, and it was restored to something good, something moral, something nice. Okay, so And as I told you, these are, I want you to remember these people, okay, two diary writers during the time of restoration through whom we know what was happening. I told you, I keep telling multiple times, how is history preserved? History is preserved through literature. These people were writing everything that they were seeing as in the form of a diary. Okay, diaries were also popularized. I mean, personal diaries were written, but diaries to have a social commentary, political commentary on what was going around, that was popularized during this period because of these people, and those are Samuel Pepys and John Evelyn. Even if you don't try to remember John Evelyn, I am giving too many Johns, I believe. Okay, John Milton, John Bunyan, John Evelyn, one more John is coming, John Dryden in the next period. However, if you don't remember too many John Evelyns, you just remember Samuel Pepys. Samuel Pepys' diary is the most important one because he was a secretary. So because he was secretary, he used to get all this juicy gossip of what was happening in the secretary, in the parliament, and he used to leak these details to the people if there were any internal conflicts were going on. That is also one reason how all these Puritans got information about what was going on of all the internal politics and the corruption that they sought to protest against, isn't it? And the diaries covered from especially the Restoration Age about all the scandals, political scams, whatever were happening. And Pepys used shorthand. You must be knowing shorthand. I keep mentioning shorthand in your classes, right? Shorthand is a technique of writing of lot of content in a very shortened form, but his shorthand could not be deciphered. Deciphered, I mean analyzed. It took a lot of time. It was not until 1825 that it was deciphered. Okay, and it was translated into actual text as we read now. But he used to give gossip. I mean, those who could understand his diary could read back then, but it was translated as, printed as literature only in 1825. This is one important concept I want you to remember because this is in your syllabus. French influence is a separate component you have in your syllabus. So take notes for it or whatever you do want to do about it. This is for those who only bother about exams. Okay. French influence. So during this time what happened is the people during Cromwell period, the people who supported the crown, they fled. They fled to France, they fled to Italy, they fled to these places, and when Charles II came back, all these people came back. So while they were coming back, they brought back the influence from them. How they met French people, how they were writing, the style, okay, the themes that they explored, they brought back the influence and they started writing in that flow. So that is how the French influence came. Many influences came, but the French influence is very prominent. Okay, because all the restoration drama, it seems to be very much close to how the French drama was going on. That is why French influence is really important. Okay. So yeah, as I was telling, on their return, when Charles II came back, they brought the gaiety of Paris. Okay, gaiety is the noun form of being gay. Gay, as I keep telling, it's not what you think. It's being very pompous or colorful and explorative kind of thing. Okay, so the gaiety of Paris. Paris is in France, that you know, right? Yeah. So all the gaiety of Paris was brought with them while they were returning. And these are the famous writers of French. I don't expect you to remember them, but I need to tell. And I expect you to remember at least one person, that is Molière. That is how it's pronounced. Molière is the greatest French writer because that is how they claim him to be. If you remember at least one person, Molière, those are into literature, I'd be happy. And Pascal, you might be knowing. Pascal, how do we measure pressure? What is the measurement of pressure? Pascals, isn't it? So the scientific writing of Pascal also influenced. And Racine is also another person. Racine is known for his explicit sexual exploits in his writings. Okay, and Bossuet, Fenelon, Malherbe, Corneille, these are all other secondary writers of French. And Racine, as I told you, he took especially the Greek characters and explored sex and love. Okay, who is the Greek goddess of love? Aphrodite, also called Juno in Roman mythology. And do you know why all the Greek war happened? If you don't want to remember, it's fine. Yes. no, that is a really small subplot. The main plot is that Zeus, Zeus takes the form of a swan, okay, and he rapes Leda, and out of that rape is born Helen, okay, and there is a person called Menelaus who gets Helen as a war gift, but he is again taken away by another person. So the whole war is because of this woman who was born out of rape. So Greek has these kind of themes, and Racine used to explore all these concepts in his. So you might be understanding how the Restoration drama is influenced by the French drama. And Molière, he's actually another extreme. He used to be very moralist, but the stories he used to take to portray morals is also again an influence. He used to take very grave kind of description to portray the morals that he is pointing towards. Yes, so in the Elizabethan time, there was a spirit of patriotism. There is a spirit of valor. Okay, there is a spirit of chivalry. There is a spirit of romance, but a good sense of romance. Okay, I mean a decent sense of romance. And there is individualism. All this was lost in the age of Restoration, and there was a tendency towards two things. Okay, when you write the answer about French influence, make sure to mention these two things. For those who bother about exams, again I am telling you, realism, formalism. These are the two main components of French influence that they brought along with them when they were writing. Okay, realism is, what could be realism about? Realism is not trying to not trying to exaggerate and not trying to portray it in a euphemistic way, okay, or as a good way, but portraying it as it is. Okay, for example, people sometimes use some imagery to not use sexual explicit content, but when you use it as it is, you portray it realistically, that is realism. Okay, whatever the bad is happening in the society, you portray it as it is, that is realism. Okay. Yes, that's what the word I was looking for, without sugarcoating it. Yes. So yeah, realism has the tendency to portray it in a realistic way about the corrupt court and the society, and there was a lot of emphasis on this kind of usage. Okay, so what happened is, earlier drama, what it used to be, even earlier the society was corrupt, but when the people came to the theatre, when they sat and when they witnessed the play was romanticized, sugar coated, okay, soothing to the eyes and ears. So when they saw that, they felt good. Okay, there is a concept called catharsis. I'll explain it later, but they used to have this feeling of catharsis. Okay, but now realism, when it came, it showed society as it is. What was going around, it was portrayed on the stage exactly. Okay, if the families were having extramarital affairs, if people were killed for their romantic interests, the society was corrupt financially, ideally, and all this morally kind of thing. So that is how the portrayal was during the drama in Restoration. And the other one is formalism. Formalism has to do with, I mean, some of you people might agree to formalism. I wouldn't agree to formalism. Formalism is using short, clean-cut sentences instead of using unnecessary words. Okay, so if you have ever read poetry, to describe one single incident, for example, Paradise Lost, I'll allude to again because I have mentioned it. Just to mention the how Satan stepped onto the stage, there is 20 lines of poetry describing all imagery, how his shield was looking. Okay, his shield as compared to how Galileo could see the moon, so that is used to compare his shield. So you understand, right, how the words were. But French influence, when it was brought to England, they brought formalism, just clean cut words and not using lot of flowery words, exaggeration, long lines of expressing the point in minimal words. Poem, yeah.
Is using
Yes, yes. So that is why poetry did not thrive much in this age, drama thrived much. And later, that is why this is another reason which leads into prose now. Okay, now we are not much into poetry, right? Only few of you are, like us. Most of you are into novels, because prose has come. Okay, so that is how the foundation stone was laid by the French influence. So what happened was, all the writers, what they brought, they wanted directness, they wanted simplicity. Okay, and from the French influence they brought all this. So this is how it is described: a close, naked doesn't mean actually naked. Naked is you can just see through it, okay, instead of trying to analyze and interpret it like poetry. A close, naked, natural way of speaking, as near to mathematical plainness. Also, formalism, as I told you, Pascal, I told you, right, the one who invented pressure measurement. So there were a lot of scientific references. Okay, their writing was supposed to be justified by scientific inventions. Okay, so more logic, more mathematical reasoning, more scientific reasoning was beginning to be associated with the writings. Okay, instead of using pure imagination and pure fantasy. So these are the main two influences brought by the French influence. What are the first one is? What are the two components? Realism, formalism. This is another lesser influence. I'm fine even if you don't remember, but the concept of couplet. What could be a couplet? Couplet, two lines poetry. What is it called in Hindi? Doha, isn't it? So the concept of couplet also came from the French influence. Somebody was doing on Edmund Waller, if I'm not wrong. Pavani? Edmund Waller, did you present it? So yeah, if you see in Edmund Waller's poetry, the couplet was used, but the couplet was perfected in Restoration time. Couplet means only in two lines, and the meaning is in its two lines only. You don't need any continuation for the meaning to be concluded. So the meaning ends in its two lines only, and that is couplet. And couplet is also a part of the influence of French influence.